All right, guys, back with HYPEWORKS podcast this week, episode number 38, with myself, Alex, bonsoir,
Jake.
Jake, and our
Yep.
guest this week is Mr. Nathan Yeung.
How's it going,
And
guys?
yeah. And I know how to pronounce Yeung because I'm based in Hong Kong, so there's a lot of Lungs and Youngs, and well versed in that.
And funny enough, my family actually has two spellings of the last name because one of them spelled it differently when they landed. So we actually have the proper Young, and then we have my Young.
My Young. Okay.
Where did they land from? Did they land from Hong Kong?
Yes, yeah, from Hong Kong.
Oh, okay. You never know. It could be Taiwan. Just throwing a spanner in the works there. Okay. So, Nathan, you are the CEO. You know, it's one of them, isn't it? Find your audience.online, right? At least that's your domain address. So why don't you start with telling us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into how you arrived at the position that you are today.
So what ended up happening was I was the CEO of an ad technology company. I was managing about 20 people. And I was quite upset with my CEO because he did not honor my option package. So I left. And as I left, frankly speaking, let's just say I was more or less the CEO of that company. I was the president. I was running day-to-day operations, and 20 employees represented a large portion of that company. And when I left, a lot of people wanted to leave with me. And I've run prior businesses for a very long time, and I ended up creating this agency as a bit of a home for some of those employees. So when we first started, it was really ragtag, right? So I said to them, I was like, I've done consulting before. I could start a consulting business tomorrow. So that's essentially what we did. And I took on some of the employees that left, and we kind of did our own thing. And then we started trying to build a business. And so now here we are 7.5 years in. We've worked with some, notable names like Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank / Dragon's Den. We've worked with some of the largest companies in Canada. I know that may not sound so big because this is an international podcast, but one of them is 84 billion in market cap, so they're quite big. Canada has big companies, and that's Constellation Software. They have, don't quote me on this, but I'm going to say at least 300 plus different software companies that they own. We've worked with venture capital, private equity, like we've done everything, but a majority of our business is around B2B SaaS, and that's kind of where our focus is in. And we have some fun projects here and there where we do some e-commerce products as well.
Oh, amazing. Honestly, amazing. I love these kind of stories, because I think to most people, the people listening in the office right now, it's hard for them to see that bigger picture, but you set off on this 7-year-long journey, and I'm sure it wasn't all plain sailing. And when you started off, maybe you were small and you had to find ways to scale and grow. So I'd really love to dig into the journey. So it's year one, year two. How did year one differ from year two? How did year two then go into year three? Like, where did it start?
Oh man, I can, I probably won't get the years 100% correct, but I definitely remember the journey. So the first year, we were just doing mom and pop contracts, right, here and there. And we were just trying to get revenue through the door. At the same time, we also had a different business model. We were an affiliate. So essentially we were doing media arbitrage at the beginning of our business to drive initial cash flows. That's actually where cash flows came from at the beginning of the business. And for those that don't know, there's affiliate marketing in the traditional sense where you have a blog, you're an influencer, you've got people clicking and you're getting a commission from that. That's one form of affiliate. The other form of affiliate is media arbitrage, where I'm essentially fronting all the cash to buy the media in order to make a spread between my cost and what I'm making in terms of our revenue from CPA, so our cost per action. So for simple sake, I'm buying a click or a lead form for $1, and then I'm selling that for $2. So for every lead, I'm getting $1. So that was our original actual revenue source, and retainers was kind of just a new thing for us. And as we grew from the first year, we realized that affiliate marketing is, while great money, incredibly stressful for cash flows. Like we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit cards and not necessarily even knowing if you're going to get paid, right? So there's a huge payment risk that comes in that business. So within a year, we started transitioning because we couldn't handle the stress of not getting paid. And there was one time where, for anyone that's in affiliate, sometimes you get skimmed. And what that means is they invalidate some of your quote unquote leads and they just say they're disqualified and they just don't pay you for it. That's not a pleasant experience. So we were just like, this is too risky. Let's try to figure out a retainer business. So by the second year, we started doing more retainer work. But then again, still mom and pop. We were building websites. We were doing things here and there. And honestly, the business just wasn't growing. This was the year where I took on one of my old senior members from the company that actually left prior to me leaving. And I said, hey, I have this business. You're not working. Can you come work for me? I trust you. And that's kind of the point where the business started changing between the year 2 and year 3. And the truth is I had a hard time empowering my employees. For anyone that's ever run a business, and I'm sure it's always a challenge to let go of that control. And that was the time where actually my employee, the one that I took from that had worked with me prior, she came to me. She's like, Nathan, here's the deal. You either empower us or I leave. And I was like, oh crap. You're empowered. And that's what happened. So we essentially went from like 4 or 5 people to like 8, then to 9, then to 12, then to 14. And then COVID hit and smacked me right across the face. Absolutely destroyed our growth. It was the first time I had to lay off immediately. We had a weird thing where people were kind of mutinying us because they're like, you don't care about our health. We're still in the office. I was like, man, I'm just like every other business right now trying to navigate this weird thing called a pandemic. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Deloitte doesn't know what they're doing. Right? Like, why are you? So we got a whole bunch of challenge and we went immediately remote. And that was a stressful time because we were not a remote business. And then we became remote, albeit through trial and error and forced nature of business of COVID. So that kind of happened. And honestly, we stayed level for 2 years, right? That was COVID, call it 2 years. And then right after COVID, we went straight up to 25, 26, 27 people. And that was kind of good because that kind of proved the thesis that my business and what we were doing was right. And we had the ability to grow. So we grew exponentially. So in year 5 and 6, we grew to that 26 number. And then essentially in year 7, which is kind of the one now-ish, we grew so much and I said, no more sales. I was like, I'm not doing any more outbound. We've grown too much. Our operations is not crap, but it could be way better. So I kind of took the foot off the gas pedal. I said, let's focus on operations. Let's tighten up our SOPs. Let's tighten up our quality. And now here I am in the present year where we're doing great. I've keynoted a large conference here in Toronto, which is for 100 CEOs. It's called PureScale. It's a beautiful network of really like well-known bootstrap founders with over, I think, I'm going to say $10 billion of exits that have come from this group. So very tight knit group that I got to speak to. I'll be keynoting at Tech Exit and SaaS North this year. SaaS North is, I'm going to call it Baby Collision. For the presenters and producers there, don't hate me for that. You guys are a little bit smaller. You're like the second one. So for you guys in Europe, it's like Web Summit, right? But it's like Baby Web Summit, but not by much. Like it's 2,500 people, so it's a big thing. So we've got some amazing things going on. I'm going to be authoring a book by the end of this year, which I wrote last year, which is based on consumer psychology and marketing. So everything's going well. I'm super excited. Like the story's great. Our brand is great. Our track record is great. But I will preface all of this, my friend. I grew this business on the steepest side of Everest, and I chose to do it. And I will tell everyone, take the route that is easier, and that is specialize more than I did. Like, just don't ever build a business like I did, in the sense of we were doing websites, SEO, content, media buying, creative, trade show booths, procurement, coordination, all that. To grow a marketing business with all of those technical skill sets was probably the dumbest idea for me to do. And it
Yeah.
was a grind. We got to scale now because when you get to 26 people, you have scale, you have multiple people in departments. So now it's easy. But getting here, terrible. Could have been much easier if I just focused.
Nathan, you've like packed like a lifetime's worth of like experience, and you're what, like 30? Like you're super young.
I'm 36.
Oh man, you look young. Asian genes, right? Super young. Jeez.
Asians don't raise
So,
it.
so yeah, so you've packed in a lot. What's like? Maybe I'm jumping ahead of you, but like, what's your focus now? Like, we always ask our guests like, what are you focusing on right now? Is it fair to say you're focusing on a lot of different things, or are you gonna like focus on one thing like moving forward, like more about personal brand, or what's the focus?
The personal brand is really just an extension of the company. I don't look at it as a personal brand. Everything comes back to the company at the end of the day, and find your audience is my focus. And the reason I love it is because it's a business where it's incredibly intellectually challenging, and I get to work with so many great people. I'm not as privileged as venture capital people, where they get to sit across the desk, ask the smartest people in the room really stupid questions, and they have to answer. But pretty darn close in terms of being able to go into any company, go in a C-suite, and be like, I don't understand your product. You need me to understand it, because if I don't understand it, I can't market it for you. And so this job is incredibly rewarding because I do get to go in so many different industries. I'll give you some really random ones. Second largest jet fuel pipeline company in North America. Like,
Okay.
how am I supposed to market that? I'll figure it out. And another one was like one of the largest like oligopolies on servicing the HVAC units for ice rinks. Didn't know that was a really profitable business, but it is. And like they're like, we need more business. It's like, well, you're kind of an oligopoly, so I'm not too sure how much more business you can get. But it's such a joy that I get to work in all these different businesses and really understand the challenges that they face. And they're all their challenges are always unique to their industry and category because of their ideal customer profile. Those ideal customer profiles are sometimes really easy to reach or sometimes really hard to reach. And that's the fun of it. It's like figuring out, how do you reach these people? How do you do it well? How do you do it well with the people you have, and executing on that?
Yeah, we did delve into this, Jake, in a previous podcast. We talked a little bit about funnels, sales funnels, and customer profiles, and it's one of these like it's very hard to define a lot of the time, right? Especially for like that kind of client, like how do you go about that? How, like, broadly speaking, how do you go about defining like a ICP customer profile, like step by step?
Step by step is, I think, first and foremost, you go through who your current customers are or who your previous customers are, and you start mapping out if there's any overlap, right? Any consistency in whether it's the size of the company, the title of the people that have. So I call it the doors. When you have a sales conversation, there are multiple doors you enter. That could be the CFO door, that could be the C-suite door, that could be middle management door, and trying to find those consistencies to build out your initial profile. And once you build out the initial profile, you can really start asking yourself the questions of, how am I actually talking to this profile, or am I just like falling into them? Really, like, just by accident or by happy stance. It's like you're not actually being prudent or being intentional. You're just kind of finding that person. That's fine. And then you want to further define them in the sense of, what are the problem sets that you have actually solved for these people? Why have they really hired you previously, and understand those consistencies. And so once you get some of those demographic details, title and sociographic details, you kind of can come up with a basic a basic ideal customer profile, where not only will you have the quantitative stuff, you also have the qualitative stuff, and that qualitative stuff is ideally those pain points. So we work with companies that are between, this is mine. We work with companies between 2 million to 20 million ARR, and typically less than 50 employees, and do not have a marketing or have a junior marketing person in place. And the reason we do that is because our pain point we solve, the number one pain point we solve well, is we're going to be way better. We're going to be 10 times better than your first marketing hire, guaranteed. There's no way your first marketing hire is going to do a better job than us. It's not possible unless you spend like $200,000 and you just hire like an absolute rock star, and you're not going to do that. They're not, right? So like that's our ideal customer profile, because we know anyone that falls in that, there's like a high probability they have those pain points, and so therefore they're a high probability sale.
So Nathan, how do you counter the fact that, like we've talked about this before, myself and Jake, like a lot of brands, they just throw people at the problem, they just grab people like junior fresh grads and they throw them in there, and they'll say to you, these guys they're not going to say they're not expensive, but they're going to say they're cost effective. Like how do you combat that? How do you upsell from that point of view?
That's a great question, and a lot of it has to come down to just helping guide the C-suite into creating a scenario that makes sense to them, and whether the way I guest lecture, and I don't know if you guys saw that in my bio. I've guest lectured at like UC Berkeley and stuff like that, and I think the number one thing that I do when I teach is you have to use analogies that you think or have a good idea that the other person that you're talking to likely understands well. So if you're talking to someone who has a hobby in boxing, I'm going to try to help them understand. It's like, well, you're a professional boxer. You're going into the ring. Why are you paying a $5 boxing coach? Like, do you think that's a good use of your time? And if you use that person for 6 months, even though they're cost effective, even though they are a coach, but they're a coach with really no credentials, do you really think you're going to get a good outcome of that? And what would be the cost of that after 6 months? Right? So for me, when it comes to that cost effectiveness, that you just have to put that in terms where you go, can I get the other person to understand in their own terms, in their own frame of mind, in an analogy that they understand and appreciate and respect, and be like, do you think that's a good idea? And they go, well, no. So it's like, why would that be any different when you hire, a perfectly happy grad, but one that has no experience, and more importantly, you can't even guide that individual because you don't know that area of expertise. So I'm sure you know what the blind leading the blind means. So this is the blind leading the blind, is it not? And if you can't have that conversation or you can't guide that story, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time. If you try to do the factual route, it's not going to work. But you have to use it in a frame of mind that they can understand and respect.
Alex, I've got to jump back into Nathan's story here because we're going to have a rewind now. Unbelievable. I love the way you're talking. I like the way it's instantly relatable. Were you always this good at talking? Was this a learned skill? Like, we've had the ups and downs. Year 1, the mom and pop stores. Year 2, the affiliate and the struggle. Year 3, COVID, disaster, start again. And, this skill set that you have is evident to me when you're talking. You're really able to step into another person's shoes and frame a problem in a way that makes it easy for them to understand. I have to ask, is this a gift, or is this something that came through those struggles, those ups and downs of year 1, 2, and 3, and then has built up until this point in year 7?
That's a great question. If you were to ask me, how did Nathan learn how to communicate? I think I have amazing friends. And I'm going to say a big shout out to Sherry. She's one of my best friends. She's, I'm going to say, a super communicator. And I think I've just been privileged to have so many great people around me who helped educate that. I said at a very young age, I was like, if you really think about communication, if you think about the language, all this is just, it's sound waves just hitting you in the face. That's all it is, right? If you really think about that. So how I use a word and how you use a word is going to be fundamentally different, because how we perceive life is through experience. And that means even if we have the exact same experience, you will still perceive a word slightly different. It's never going to be one-to-one. And I think for me at a very young age, I just recognized that. This isn't a sob story. I'm not a victim. I was bullied. I was on the short end of the stick growing up, and I could have gone one or two ways. I could have been really jaded and gone inwards. But for me, it was more like, why am I being bullied? Right? Like, am I the bad person? And I always had that curious nature. And so I think that's where I learned to empathize. And when I learned to empathize, I started recognizing, well, if we can be empathetic, and if we do a really good job trying to be empathetic, you can come up with analogies that likely are easier for them to consume because they have had a lived experience or something close that you'd hope is a lived experience. Now, I'm not going to say I get my analogies on point like 100% of the time, but I would say
today.
Yeah, no. So I would say like 80% of the time I hit it right, and you could see the light bulb going there. And then I always go, so that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about, right? And then they go, oh, I understand that. I was like, yeah. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about it like that. And they go, oh, okay. And then I can have a more concerted conversation around that. So when I'm educating or I'm talking to someone that I don't know, I always go, what do you like? What's a hobby you have? And I do that so that I have an anchor. And that's an anchor where hopefully I know this. Like I would love for someone says like, I was a professional gamer. I was like, yes, I can do this because I was a professional gamer too. So I can make a ton of analogies, right? Or sometimes they'll give me a hobby that I know nothing about. Like I love cricket. Then I'd be like, oh God, I'm out. There's no analogies for me in this one because I don't know cricket very well. So the other thing is you have to be well versed in a lot of different things, which I, again, privileged to be able to experience so much in my life. Where usually when someone says, hey, this is what I like, this is what I'm interested in, I know enough about that where I can bridge the gap into that interest.
Awesome. Top marks. Perfect answer. Absolutely love that. I'm thrown away. I'm listening so intently to what Nathan is saying. I'm not even thinking about the next question, Alex. I'm not sure if you've got one lined up.
I just want to, Nathan, you mentioned so you work with some big companies in Canada. I just want to know, like, do you have any like role models in terms of like, you've obviously got Shopify there, right, in Canada, which is kind of like it's like the star company in Canada, right? It's the most valuable company, and I follow like Toby and like all the Shopify guys. They're very good at what they do. Do you have like another one we often talk about is 37 Signals, like from agency side, like they're like this gold star. Is there people that you admire from that perspective, or?
We have some amazing exits from Canada, right? Plenty of Fish was like a very original dating app that came out of Vancouver. Shopify is obviously a huge Canadian born and bred star. There's another company called Certain, which is run by Andrew McLeod, or I sometimes screw up his name, but he's also from Vancouver, which is a SaaS company that helps people authenticate IDs and do background checks at scale. And so, if you were to really ask me, like, who are people that I really look up to, there's so many. I can't name, and I think that's just because all of them have very different work ethics. Like Toby is methodical in the way he works. If you look into Toby's actual work schedule, Toby, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, he actually has time in his day to game.
Yeah.
The game. And I love that because why not? I love that. Like that's also something that I've been, saying more these days. Why not? If you don't have an answer for that, don't question me. Why not? Why do you game every day? Why not? Nathan, why do you work out at 4:30 a.m. in the morning? Why not? Unless you can give me a good reason, don't question me. Just appreciate what I'm doing and be curious and lean in. And so I think all of these CEOs, let's just be truthful about this. They're in a role because they're doing something incredible, and how they do it is all a little bit different. And I think there's something to be learned about all of them if you're curious enough to learn why. And for Toby playing games, like I was like, I need to know why, because I would love to be able to do that, but I want to understand why he's doing that. And it's such an interesting story of like, that's where he's creative. This is how he gets his mental breaks, and he actually affords that. And that's cool, man. That's amazing. Some people
Yeah.
might be going on hikes. Some people might be reading. Some people might be cold baths. I don't care what it is. But there was one thing that is in common with almost every CEO that I know that has been successful. They are disciplined when it comes to their schedule. They are disciplined when it comes to protecting their time. That's the two main things. So I can't name one person I love, because I think I look up to all of them for different reasons. Like, I don't really enjoy Elon Musk, but I still look up to him because he has very
Yeah.
aspirational things. But I don't necessarily look up to him perfectly as like a role model, right?
Yeah. So like
Yeah, I hope that kind of
as
answers your question.
another thing I was going to say is like as agency owners, like there's no real exit as such. I mean, you can sell your agency to another agency, but like a lot of agencies are just kind of like what they call like a lifestyle business. Like, so you kind of take money out, right? Dividends and payouts and stuff. So like, what's from your perspective, like what's the end goal from an agency side? Um,
If you were to really ask me what my end goal is, I think my goal would be to sell, and I would love to sell to an
uh,
international agency. And the reason I would do that is actually just because I would love to be acquired by an international agency where I now have the ability to work even further outside of my comfort zone.
yeah.
We do work with clients that are international but are headquartered in Canada.
Mm,
Meaning, like, we do have clients that work in the UK, work in Germany, work in Denmark, Norway. We have clients like that, but I don't get to work natively in those places,
yeah.
which I would love to do because I would find that challenging going into a brand new country and trying to figure that out. And I think that's the end game for me. I don't run this business like a lifestyle business, meaning on a sorry guys, I need to clear my throat here.
It's okay.
um, on a on a income perspective, I do not drain the business of income. I'm very much still on growth mode, and my goal is to get to the point where we will become a valuable agency, because not only my systems and processes to work asynchronously with a remote team, and the experiences that we've had is and will be invaluable to someone.
Yeah, I know, it makes sense, and
Okay.
I can drop a name in the hat if you want. Neil Patel, like that guy's like buying. He just bought a big agency in Hong Kong in Asia. That
So
guy's
funny
buying
enough,
like so
I
many agencies.
I will be I could be wrong on this, but for SAS North, I'll be main staging with Neil Patel. So Neil
Ooh,
Patel is one keynote, and I'll also be another keynote.
that guy's super direct, right? Like he just goes for the jugular every time. It's just like no shit, you know. He just goes in there. It's funny.
He look, he's a marketer, and he
Yeah,
has a stance, and I think he's smart about it. I feel like if I was a marketer, I would not be in the same positioning as he would be. Um, I think there's, you know what? It's fair. I was gonna say there's kind of two sides of the coin for Neil Patel. There's people that really like him and really don't. And the truth is, I was about to actually just correct myself as I said that. Hypothetically, that's actually good marketing if you think about it. A person who actually has two very clear sides of likability generally means they have a strong position in the market. Generally means that people
yeah.
understand that person. Because if you don't, hypothetically, that means you're probably not getting your messaging out to the market properly.
I understand. Actually, that kind of like this segues me back now. I've actually remembered what I was going to ask, which is, within these transitions, you've moved, and as you've grown and your business model has changed, has your approach changed as well? Like, you've introduced a new product that you're going to go to market with. You must have had to change tact because you're no longer selling to smaller businesses. You're moving to bigger businesses. Did that change you and how you approach the situation?
Yeah, for sure. One, my retainers went up to yin yang. So our average retainer, I'm just going to say, is on the upper end of five figures, typically hitting six figures. How we sell, the administrative process of how we sell changes. When you work with larger companies, they need more process. So that's something, by the way, right? Any of you agencies that are like working with small companies, you can get away with ricky dinky contracts. Once you get to mid to enterprise, they're not okay with that. They're going to want proper contracts. The way you process contracts becomes a brand new thing. The way you handle billings becomes far more complicated, because now you're sometimes taking on billings for expenses that are part of the project that are a little bit more expensive. So there are a ton of administrative and operational processes that need to change as you grow. On a sales perspective, absolutely it changes, because now you're dealing with a much larger buying consortium. When you're working in a small business, you're working with the owner. When you're working with enterprise and mid to enterprise, you're working with the CEO, you're working with the COO, you're working with the CFO. You might even be working against a marketing person, that whether that be a VP of marketing, director of marketing, or CMO. So the way you appease that buying consortium is now completely different. And I think the reason why I do well in this space is just because my background was not in marketing. So I gave you the story of my company, but my story as a person is I went to school for marketing, and then I was a VP of finance at the age of 21, doing roadshows with Carlton Fitzgerald of Hong Kong for Chinese companies. And you're just like, what? That makes no sense. I was like, well, I hustled for that job. And then I was a management consultant for a bunch of angel investors, where I was helping them kind of be an operational consultant inside the companies they invested in. So when I approach marketing from just a very different mindset. It's I suppose if you look at the archetypes, I'm not a creative CMO. We do a ton of creative stuff, but that's not my foot forward always. It's always like operational sustainability of marketing. That's like the approach I go to.
Yeah.
So I'm like the operational CMO. I look for sustainable and practical marketing strategies. So, and I think there's not a lot of Nathans, I think. And that's also because there's not a lot of Nathans there's not a lot of marketers who actually have gotten their hands dirty in 50 plus clients across multiple industries, across multiple different sizes. And so therefore, when I come to the table, I have all of these lived experiences, all of these complexities amongst all of these different ICPs, industries, categories, sizes, sales processes, marketing tactics, channels. And I can come to you and be like, I have a high probability approach. This is why. And they go, oh, he actually probably knows why ours isn't going to work. And I can walk through all that. So it's this entire journey is just it's been different, and I feel like we're just different, but again, it's a unique story for us.
Yeah,
Alex, have we sorry mate, go on.
No, I was just gonna say yeah, you're the opposite of Gary Vee. Gary Vee is just a nutcase. Anyway, go on, Jake.
No, well, okay. I was gonna say, are we moving into the question?
Yes, go ahead.
The question. Okay, Nathan, you're on the spot now. This is the hot seat question that we ask every guest, and we get a different answer sometimes, but we'll talk about that after you've answered the question. And the question is, what are your future predictions? It could be anything. It could be for the industry, it could be for the world, it could be for Nathan. So future projections.
Predictions,
sorry.
Projections is cool.
Semantics.
I'll do it for the industry, because I think that's what people will listen to and will value.
Yeah.
And I have a couple. One, primary research will become more valuable as we start to lose truth through AI. And what I mean by that is we will rely so much on the meta-analysis that's being conducted by AI that people will no longer feel like those results are authentic. So therefore, primary research, real research with people, will become more and more important. Two, I suspect or expect that Perplexity or other generative AI search tools will continue to rely on organic search results. So therefore, SEO will still remain an important channel or pillar for any business going forward. But I can't understand why they would not do this but I would expect that anyone that relies on search engine results will ultimately then build their own pay-per-click model to influence the footnotes of the search results of which they're producing. So Perplexity searches, then provides footnotes. Now you can pay and say, if anyone talks about XYZ or these are keywords, we want to be the footnote that you pull up and reference for that quote. So now you're going to get sponsored responses from generative AI because that's where they can make money, and I don't see why they wouldn't do that. And the third thing is, for marketing wise, creativity will still remain one of the more unique values of marketing that cannot be replaced by generative AI. Now, can generative AI assist in the depth and breadth of creativity? Yes. Can they execute on it 100%? I'm going to say maybe in the next 5 years. Maybe next 5 years. So creativity is still going to be a huge and invaluable thing. For example, a great guerrilla hack was a payments company that went to a fintech conference and put money inside of a large block of ice and said, don't have your payments frozen like PayPal. And to come up with that idea, you might be able to use AI to generate the ideas, but to execute on it, to plan it, to coordinate it, that's also still going to be human talent. So I still think creativity will be relatively protected for a period of time. So those are kind of my predictions.
That was some absolutely stunning predictions, because a lot of people will reveal the truth now. Nearly everybody we ask is AI. It's always an AI-led question, and you threw me off a little bit in your approach to how you talked about AI, because most people are saying, well, it's going to replace this and that, but you talked about it as in more of an assistant role as opposed to a leading role, which I think is quite different to how our previous guests answered that question. I absolutely love the answer. I've really, no comment on it. I think it makes total sense to me. I think we always talk about on our side, me and Alex, about the role of creators, and that we are moving into this creator-led world as well. And Alex had already mentioned at the start of this podcast that we're doing about your new, online presence with growing your own personal brand, as Alex referred to it as. And I think that that's important, and increasingly important in a world with AI, because ourselves as avatars, although we could use generative AI, being authentic and being yourself, being human, is something that AI can't replace, which is why I think that definitely continue down the avenue of growing your online presence through being Nathan online. I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, and look, AI isn't going to replace all the quirks about you too, right? I'm a health optimized geek. I swallow 30 pills every morning because I'm a geek.
You're a Brian Johnson fan, Nathan.
Yes, I am. I'm not exactly, but I would say pretty darn close. Personally for myself, like I'm a health freak. That adds a layer to Nathan. I was a professional Counter-Strike player when Counter-Strike was 1.6 and not whatever it is right now, and when gaming wasn't cool. And all of that depth, like all of that coolness or quirkiness, that's, you're never going to replace that with AI. And so that's why you're right. I think being a creator, being your authentic self, being human, is going to be so important, because when you talk to an AI, sure, they can empathize with you now, but they're not human, right? You still know that empathy that you're receiving through your new psychiatrist app that you're now paying for because you feel lonely at night is still not human. That whoever's talking to you has not had that lived experience. They have not had trauma the way you've experienced trauma. They have not grown and seen challenges the way you've seen grown. And that's how we connect as people, right? This sounds terrible, but when I was working in China, I came back and I said to my dad, Dad, I now know how to make best friends with chairmen. And he said, how? I was like, when you puke in the same toilet together, you become best friends pretty damn quick. And he laughed at me. And he shook his head in disappointment. And I said to him, I was like, but it's true. When you share vulnerable, challenging moments together, you bond real quick. and like, that's the human element. AI is never going to do that for you, right? A creator is going to be that person for you, because you can still share that moment with a creator.
It's true.
Lovely.
Just quickly, like, what's the best channel for people to connect with you on? Like, best
I'd honestly
social
say probably just like LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think there's not that ton of there's a whole bunch of computer science Nathan Youngs. I don't think there's a ton of marketing Nathan Youngs. So you look up my name on LinkedIn, you'd be pretty quick to find the marketing Nathan.
Can't wait. Okay.
Yeah,
Love that.
let's wrap. Great to have you on. Let's get you back on, Nathan. You've got a lot to share in the future, so we'll get you back on.
Appreciate it,
Can't
guys.
wait. Thank you, Nathan.
Cheers, Nathan. Cheers. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.